All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's Knowledge Lab webinar. My name is Mario De Divitiis, and I'm a proud graduate of the Master's Directors College program, and I'm currently the CEO of the Ronald McDonald House for South Central Ontario. This afternoon, I'll be your moderator. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here today and to welcome our guests. Before the introduction, I'd like to start off with the McMaster's Land Acknowledgement. McMaster University recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga Haudenosaunee nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon, One Pan agreement. It is exciting to see people joining these webinars from all over North America and the world. Thank you for your interest in this topic and for continuing to support McMaster and DeGroote's programming. Today, we're pleased to welcome two DeGroote alumni industry experts to our panel discussion. Meaghan Stovel-McKnight is the CEO at Make-A-Wish Canada, and Jessica Bernat is the Associate Director of Digital Marketing at the Canadian Red Cross. Meaghan and Jessica both have extensive experience in the Canadian fundraising industry, as well as various leadership roles. Meaghan brings over 2 decades of mission-motivated leadership to her role as CEO with Make-A-Wish Canada. She is responsible for overseeing all aspects of Make-A-Wish Canada as it strives to achieve its mission, providing life for children with critical illness. Prior to joining Make-A-Wish Canada as its CEO, Meaghan served as the Chief Operating Officer at the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, where despite the significant turbulence of the pandemic, she led a team to modernize foundation operations, elevate fundraising, and earn recognition as one of Canada's top 100 employers. Prior to this, she led the merger of 2 charities to form the Trillium Health Partners Foundation in 2013. Meaghan is a proud McMaster alumnus holding a Bachelor of Commerce degree from DeGroote School of Business. She is also a certified fundraising executive and was recognized as a top 40 under 40 by the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy. Jessica has spent the last 4 of her 15-year marketing career on the front line of fundraising campaigns that have yielded millions of dollars and benefited thousands of Canadians and people around the world. She strives to combine her expertise with marketing analytics and creative tools to execute strategic marketing plans that provide real value. In her current position as Associate Director of Marketing for the Canadian Red Cross, Jessica is responsible for leading the strategy and execution of the Canadian Red Cross's digital marketing campaigns. Prior to joining the Canadian Red Cross, Jessica served as the Director of Marketing and Communications for the University Hospital Foundation for 3 years. Jessica is a proud McMaster alumnus holding a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the DeGroote School of Business. She is also a certified digital marketing specialist through the Canadian Marketing Association. Welcome, Meaghan and Jessica. Thank you for both being here today and sharing your insights. Before we get started, there's just a few things we want to go over. There will be a Q&A period at the end of the discussion. You'll see that toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please use the Q&A function included in today's webinar to post your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. We've also collected the pre-submitted questions, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can. Please note that this event will be recorded for marketing and promotional purposes and or shared with DeGroote, McMaster, with our speakers, our participants, and other partners. Please contact marketing and community engagement team at DeGroote if you have any other questions. There is a hard close at 1 o'clock, so as much as I'd like to extend the goodbye, once 1 o'clock hits, we will end. So with that, let's begin today's discussion. Hi, Meaghan and Jessica.
Hey, Mario.
Hi, Mario.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, well, why don't we get started with our first question? So let's start by laying the groundwork for this discussion. What are some of the factors that are contributing to the decrease in overall giving and fundraising? On that same note, in your opinion, what is the single biggest issue facing fundraising industry in 2023? And essentially, what keeps you up at night? So why don't we start with you, Meaghan?
Thanks, Mario. So that's a big question. There's a lot of things that are on our minds out there. There's inflation, there's pandemic, post-pandemic, potential for recession, incredible competition out there. There's lots of significant headwinds. What's interesting about all of these is that a lot of those issues like inflation, pandemic, recession, not only impact our charities, but they're also really impacting the beneficiaries of our charities. And so this is really causing almost a greater need for a lot of what we're doing. hopefully a lot of those issues are cyclical. So, to me, what's the one thing that keeps me up at night is people. It's always about people. We've and talent, people, and culture. We've seen a massive transformation in the way our teams work over the last few years, and I don't know that we've quite settled in what's the new way to work. I mean, is it hybrid? Is it at the office? Is it at home? Is it there's a real competition for talent out there. A lot of our staff are still dealing with post-pandemic stress. All of those things are really what keep me up at night, because we've got to really optimize that in order to really deliver on our mission. So, I feel like all those other things are really just business problems, but effectively aligning people and culture around our mission is the one thing that keeps me up at night.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'm not the only one losing sleep over that. Jessica, how about yourself?
I mean, I don't can't say it better than Meaghan just did about the people. I definitely echo that. Coming from more of a digital marketing or mass marketing channel side of fundraising, I would say another big challenge is just privacy controls and people wanting to protect their data. They're increasing, so creating valuable, relevant content that really targets the right audience is just becoming more and more critical. Generic marketing campaigns are losing their effectiveness. You have to really understand the audiences that you're speaking to and really target your marketing and your content and your cause to them. It's no different than the for-profit world. We have to be even more creative and more aggressive and more passionate in our marketing and communication efforts in the fundraising industry. And additionally, donors can opt out of data sharing, just really having a really clear privacy policy, first party data strategy for your organization is critically important, I would say, not only in 2023, but just going forward. That's definitely something that keeps our board up at night.
Yeah, it's definitely, I tell the folks that aren't in this industry, it's such a complex and dynamic space, and we share similar problems with others, but then we have a whole, group of new challenges that are very unique to the sector. What is not unique to the sector is probably question number 2. So to build on the previous question, one of, if not the biggest obstacle facing the fundraising industry is the uncertain economic times that we are experiencing. As individuals, we're living in a period of both unprecedented interest in inflation rates, and that's not even mentioning the strong possibility of the R word. As fundraisers and leaders within these negative economic headwinds blowing into your sales, how do you go about strategically planning for this and your organization? And what factors and decisions do you prioritize to weather this storm? Well, I'll open it up for whoever would like to first start with that one.
You want me to take a go at it first, Jessica?
Sure.
So, I think this is another thing we're thinking about a lot. The reality is we've been dealing with a lot of uncertainty for a few years now. So this, inflation / recession, I kind of feel like, we've just gone through a pandemic. But I think there's 3 things that I think about in this. One of them is, as much as possible, try to think long-term. We're dealing, we don't want to make these big moves that'll impact us negatively a year from now. Now I recognize that, things like previous recessions that we might have gone through were probably only a few quarters or a year in length. So it's easier to hold on, but we've already been holding on through a pandemic. But definitely in the past with recessions, charities that didn't lay off staff, that actually thought longer term and just sort of held on, emerged a lot stronger post recession. So I think as much as you can, trying to hold on to your team and thinking long term that this too shall pass is the first one. The second one is diversifying fundraising sources. You don't want to be overly reliant on one type of fundraising because different donors may be impacted differently as a result of economic winds that change. During the pandemic, even, event-based fundraising or mass giving went down in a lot of organizations. But conversely, charities that focused on major gifts and lotteries went up significantly. Mm-hmm. The stock market was performing well, which meant major donors could still make significant gifts. And often landmark gifts in a lot of healthcare organizations, and lotteries boomed. We saw, I'll tell you, as a Princess Margaret at the time, we had significant growth and 50-50 lotteries popped up everywhere. So you don't want to be overly reliant on one thing because the recession or inflation or any of these things won't impact all your programs the same and won't impact all your donors the same. And the last thing is the opposite of thinking long-term is about making sure you are thinking long term is using financial reporting to shift levers as required. So, if you're behind in one area, how can you collectively make that up?
Yeah, I'm going to probe you on this one just a little bit, Meaghan, because I've got a specific next question, Jessica, that I really want to hear from you on. You talk about like kind of the pandemic, it's kind of, preparing you. Like, did you see kind of like added resiliency to your people, whether it's this, Make-A-Wish or previous organizations you participate in? So can you tell us a little bit about what that prepped you for?
I feel like we've all learned to operate in a period of uncertainty as the status quo. We're often talking to our teams about change is normal, change is constant, and we've all had to just get used to that. So you've had to become more resilient to it. I don't think we should be we should not consider how much stress that's caused on people, though, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, there's a lot more used to change, but there's still a lot of stress that causes that. So I think organizations are probably more resilient because we're used to responding to change. And I think the best leaders through this are comfortable with managing those changing headwinds all the time. But we can't underestimate the impact that's having on our teams. And that's the other side of making sure that you're caring for your people and your culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I know my word of the 2022 was capacity. And, we looked at that internally from a board level, from a staff level, like what are we capable of providing during this? Jessica, this question's specifically for you, given your background, and kind of I'm really excited to kind of your insights on this, is around the digital transformation of fundraising industry. So obviously, given your role as Associate Director of Digital Marketing, you will have some great insight on this. How has the digital transformation impacted how the fundraising industry overall operates? What sort of, tools, technologies are being adopted or implemented? And if possible, could you speak to how the Red Cross is actually utilizing some of this technology in their efforts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a big question. But yeah, I mean, most charitable organizations now have really accelerated, as well as non-charitable organizations, their digital transformation strategy and approach for long-term growth. I've heard some really interesting figures, but it's in every strategic plan. But what does that really mean? And I'll focus my answer mostly on the revenue generation side of digital marketing, but digital transformation obviously goes a lot deeper than that. In terms of what tools and technologies are being adopted and implemented, I'm recently actually going through a big RFPs for some big software changes, but I would say first and foremost, what CRM are you using? Does it serve your current and future needs? Does it integrate with your online donation platform, your email service provider, any automation? I think having an oversight of your overall, what is the technology stack or the ecosystem that you have is critical to success. So you need to have an oversight on the whole thing. How do all the systems talk to each other in order to leverage automation and improve your operational efficiencies? If you're only looking at this is my email platform, this is my online donation platform, it's going to be a challenge. And then I would say a big one is, your online marketing and fundraising platforms. For an organization like the Red Cross, we see massive volumes of transactions. So it has to be efficient, has to be user-friendly, easy to donate. And I think across the industry, just seeing that the time and development and resources that are required to maintain and keep up with the latest technological advances is starting to outweigh the benefits of having that customized all-in-one solution. And if your online donation platform is not equipped with conversion-based AI that it automatically changes your ask amounts, maybe if you have a really wealthy donor who's constantly coming to your site, they might see a different gift matrix with different amounts than, say, a younger person who maybe is just getting started in their career, can only donate a smaller amount. Being able to upsell donors to convert them to monthly it really helps if you can find a platform. There's a lot of platforms out there now that have that, are incorporated with artificial intelligence and machine learning and just constantly optimize for you, so you don't have to do that. Other tools and technology, your email service provider is really critical. Email's been around for a long time, but having automation and A/B testing functionality, and just setting up automated journeys to convert and retain your donors. If you're not doing this now, you're probably not doing it right. Another important tool and just change that's happening right now is if you use, analytics and just like access to data, and predictive analytics is so important. In the digital marketing world, it's all data driven, whereas, in the major gift side and corporate side, it's a lot more relationship driven. So for example, this year, like universal Google Analytics is no longer going to exist as of July. So if you haven't already transitioned to GA4 or trained your staff or engaged an agency to help you, so you definitely need to be doing that. And just, look at there's a lot of great platforms as a nonprofit organization, even with Google, Microsoft, they have grants, you can have free search. And then the last one I'll mention, I guess, and just in terms of tools, is just advertising. Like if you're relying solely on your organic channels, your organic website, your organic social media channels, you're not reaching and engaging with new donors. And I would ask you, what is your new donor acquisition strategy? So I think it's really important to leverage and have expertise either in-house or hire an agency for paid search, paid social, any other forms of paid advertising. There's so many a mix of channels that you could leverage. It really depends on the strategy of the organization and the charity of which ones to use. But I know we're still seeing Facebook and Instagram probably the strongest results, but we're playing with TikTok and YouTube and programmatic and display and out of home. So yeah, those are some of the tools and technologies. And then I think the last part of the question was specific to just the Red Cross and how we use technology.
I think you shared a little bit of that. What I kind of probe you on this is just like, I know it's like we can have a webinar just on this topic, and there was a lot, and I know I've got staff on this call, so I'm hoping they were scribing some of the notes that you were saying, but there's a lot there.
There's a lot.
And, I'm sure there's different size charities on this call. And what I'm imagining some are feeling is like a little sense of overwhelmness in terms of, and maybe you can share what you've seen, perhaps within your organization or others or anywhere where you volunteer on. How big is the knowledge gap here? Like, are we missing training? Like you used a lot of, you suggested a lot of tools and technologies, but that is under the assumption that our teams, and in some cases, could be as small as 20, could be as large as a couple hundred. Are you seeing that the industry isn't up to date in terms of a knowledge area around this?
Yeah, there's definitely a knowledge gap, even in large teams. Like if you have one person leading all of your, paid advertising, for example, think of how many channels that could be, right? That they're having to cover. We're really a big fan of leveraging agencies who have experience in all areas, and you can just pick and pull at the expertise that you need, get training and just constantly. I think because there's so many, like you could literally get lost in just reading about all these different channels where, I need to be doing this, I need to be on TikTok, I need to be here. I think I would go back to what is your strategy? Like, who is your audience? Who are you targeting? Do that research, know your market, know your share of voice, know where your donors or potential donors are online, and build a strategy that reaches them, because otherwise you're going to waste a lot of money just trying to be everywhere.
Yeah, good advice. Meaghan, and the next question will be for you. Another common issue facing fundraising and in the industry as a whole, obviously, is the competition within the market. There are so many worthy causes that are working for our attention, our dollars, our time. How do you go about breaking through this market clutter and positioning yourself in the market? What sort of strategies or tools that you use?
Great question. I think everyone's thinking about this because there is a lot of messaging out there, and we're not only just competing with other charities, but all of the messaging people get from private sector companies and all of the advertising they get. So, there's a few things that I think are important. One would be clear, focused case. Like, what's your need state messaging? Do you know exactly how you clearly articulate your cause and make it a compelling story for people to understand? The second one that I think is very helpful, and we've seen this, of course, with Sick Kids, which has done it so well, is really clear branding and just making sure that all of your pieces are connected so that every time someone interacts with your charity anywhere, it's reinforcing any other previous connection they've had with you. It really takes discipline to do that and to make sure that, not everybody's just designing their own stuff in Canva, but really making sure you're disciplined about the use of your brand. Making it personal, I think Jessica spoke about this earlier, is really like know your donor and try and personalize that material as much as you can. So you're not talking at mass, but talking to people as much as you can. So you're cutting through the clutter as a friend of theirs. Images and video, we know that brains consume images and video so much better than words. So the more ability you have to be able to get across your case through those tools will make your message break through better. And then the last one is also, it comes down to case, and people don't invest in causes as much as they invest in people. So storytelling, quotes, what is the impact that your cause has on people, and how can their support help that? So really connecting that to the human connection, which is, I think, largely why people connect with charities in the first place.
Yeah, great answer. This one is hopefully for both of you. So much like in business, we know that there's huge importance around cultivating new business and cultivating new donors. But what is times missed is retaining an existing donor or customer. So where does donor retention fit in terms of your strategic plans? And what are some of the tips or pieces of advice that you'd like to share to assist in donor retention? Jess, maybe I'll start with you this time.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely true. I mean, donor retention and retaining those donors is of high importance, probably at any charity. Some different advice, like I would just, going back to data, just really understanding your donor retention percentage year over year or month over month, or just having a good eye on what that looks like and where you need to improve. We look at it month over month so that, if it's, are we way lower than last year, or we had why, just keeping an eye on that consistently is important. I know when we get a big pile of new donors, converting them to their second gift, there's some sort of statistic on just like how soon you should do that. And just so knowing kind of the trends in the industry as a whole, I think it's important to get that second, have a specialized journey for new donors. So, so they're not just being asked all the time. They are, they're welcome, they're brought onto the organization, they get to learn you, and then following up with them sooner than later, I think is best practice. We also have certain sort of retention strategies for converting donor, from one-time gift to maybe a monthly gift. If there's, a certain cluster of donors give a certain number of gifts in a year, they might be more likely to become a recurring donor. So there's lots of different strategies that can be applied to donor retention, and just learning what content resonates with them, like hearing impact story, like Meaghan talked about impact, and stewarding those donors, I think is also really important.
Yeah, great answer. I personally, I share that with my team. It's a fun space. I think it's an area for you to be openly thoughtful on. What a great job to have to think about ways that might spark feelings and emotions in Meaghan and connect her with those things. What about you, Meaghan? What do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mario. To be honest, this is one of my favorite parts of the fundraising space. Like, come on, you just get to express gratitude. What a great job. I agree. I think one of the things Jessica spoke about earlier is the importance of data. It's not only knowing your donors, but also tracking, what are those stewardship actions you're doing, and keeping disciplined about that. Because oftentimes, in smaller charities, you can probably know your people. As you get about the systems in place to create the triggers to remind you, you should reach to a person because I know it's their birthday or something like that. So, I think having some of the systems in place is good for that. I think it's good to think about stewardship, making sure that it's not just one type of outreach. Part of it's recognition, but it's recognition in the way that's meaningful to that donor. Some people like it public, some people like it private. Some of it's impact reporting, so they know the impact of their work. And then it's ongoing engagement in the mission. So how do you keep them connected through those stewardship actions that keep them understanding and emotionally connected? I think the last thing I would say is I don't think it has to be overly complicated. I don't know that all donors are looking some grand thing. It's about being thoughtful. So, it's timeliness of that triggered thank you letter that comes out of your CRM system. That's great. but nothing will, do better than a personal phone call or a handwritten note. It's just being thoughtful and treating those donors as people and recognizing them for their contribution in a really meaningful way. Thank you. They are two very, very powerful words in our language. Very simple and very powerful.
Yeah, I definitely would agree on that. That the overcomplication sometimes is a bit much in terms of just making people feel good. We talked about people a couple of times on this, so I'd welcome what you in your current organization or what you're seeing others are doing, but it's about our current labor struggles across, I think, not only in the healthcare industry, but quite frankly, just about everywhere. So how do you folks go about attracting, retaining, and growing talented fundraising personnel in this ever-changing industry and this really dynamic labor market? I said to my HR person, it's kind of like putting Jello to the wall right now in terms of recruiting and what people want and what people don't want. So it's definitely different times.
I'll let you start, Meaghan.
Go ahead, Meaghan.
Okay, sure. Yes, I mean, people and culture is my number one thing I worry about. So I completely agree with you. And the people who we might have recruited 3 years ago may not be the people who are seeking these jobs today. It's a really tight market. So you got to be competitive. We have to be pretty creative about how we're competitive, because in the charitable space, we don't win on salary. So I think that, you're looking for people who are really connected to your cause, thinking about, a comprehensive people plan and what are the things you can offer to someone who joins your organization. So I think the best way to do that is to really have an open, transparent dialogue with your team. What matters to you and how are we creating an environment that delivers on that? So, some of the things we hear about are, DEI, social connection, the opportunity to be connected to our mission, appropriately competitive total compensation package. So making sure that you're benchmarking to the industry to know what that is. I think in terms of where you're looking for talent, who it's tight out there, I think you really have to think about diverse candidates and diverse candidate pools. People who may not be non-traditional candidates, like they may not have fundraising experience, but they've got great transferable skills. So you want to think about how you can hire for potential and train for skill, and plan to make those investments and ongoing investments, because training isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing commitment you have to your team. And you want, I think the best strategy of retaining people is creating a safe environment where people can do their best work. And I think that's our number one job as leaders, is creating an environment where people can bring their whole selves and achieve their highest potential. And so I think the more leaders that are thinking about creating spaces for that, the better retention we'll have and the more fulfillment people will have in their roles.
Yeah, great answer. What about yourself, Jessica? What are you hearing or seeing?
Yeah, Meaghan said it great about how to retain and grow talent. On the attracting side, I would just say, don't just look within the industry, like Meaghan alluded to as well. Look outside the industry, look at job descriptions for the companies that people want to work for, the way they write them, what they're asking for, what skill sets they need. Generally speaking, depending on what your role is, you can learn the fundraising side, really depends what the role is. But if it's a marketing role or a data role, if they're the best in their field, but they need to learn some of the fundraising stuff, that can be trained. And if they're passionate about it, if you can be competitive with wage, we're not going to win, as Meaghan said, in most cases, but as competitive as you can be for especially roles that you need that really specialized skill set or want that. I think diversifying, having a mix of more traditional fundraising type roles and outside of that will benefit the charity overall or the organization.
Yeah, I'm definitely an advocate of hire for attitude, train for skill. So I'm with you there. We're going to move to some of our pre-submitted questions, and I'd just to remind the audience that we still have our Q&A, so feel free to post anything there. A lot of our pre-submitted questions really kind of get into more of a granular perspective of some of these. So the first one's, how do you differ in approaches when it comes to individual donations versus corporate fundraising? So maybe Jess, I'll start with you there.
Sure. Again, I'm coming from, if I put more of my digital marketing hat on for this, I would say for individual donations and mass audience, it's really, if you're looking for that one-time or monthly donor, the strategy might be very different. If you're looking for corporate and company fundraising, leveraging different channels like LinkedIn, we use at the Red Cross like corporate matches a lot. So maybe there's just coming up with creative ways to partner. I think you can be a lot more creative and relationship based with companies and corporate, and what might benefit them and help grow their brand as well as benefit you. And I think if you align on your values and mission, I've seen really great partnerships with corporate organizations. On the major gift side, Meaghan can speak better to that. For mass marketing individual donations, I would it's very different, and just what channels and tactics you would leverage, how you speak to people, how you personalize the message would differ.
What about you, Meaghan?
Yeah, I'll speak to that in the context of individual giving and corporate giving on the sort of leadership and major gift side. I think, as always, fundraising is about understanding what your donor is trying to accomplish. So on the individual giving side, what is important to that person and their family, and does your cause match that, and how do you become a vehicle to help them achieve the impact they're trying to achieve while delivering upon your mission. On the corporate side, there's usually a lot broader group of stakeholders and individuals you want to get involved. There's a lot of different reasons why companies do get involved with charities. So some of it is to deliver on their, for philanthropic strategy, but also they're looking for employee engagement. Maybe they're looking for cause-related branding alignments. Like there's different things that they may want to do. And so trying to understand those things and then creating a really custom package that maximizes that in the context of your fundraising program. So I think that it's really just understanding the objectives of your donor. On the corporate side, there's really clear objectives they're usually trying to achieve. And it's a business transaction, and they're usually investing marketing spend. So you want to make sure that you're creating a package that helps them realize their goals while realizing your goals as well.
This one kind of dovetails from, I'm guessing, the individual side. And the audience asked, how prominent is legacy giving in your organization's marketing strategy? Is it something that is planned? Is it something that's a nice surprise? Is it, and has it changed with some of the recent economic climate?
Are you asking me that, Mario?
I would imagine both, but feel free to start, Meaghan. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I think this is an area that most charities, really robust, mature fundraising programs get into. Smaller charities, not as much, just because the opportunity for those funds to actually fund your mission it's a longer investment that's hopefully well down the road for these individuals and their donors. I'll tell you, Make-A-Wish, this hasn't been an area of focus, although given the transformational impact we have on children and families, it should be an area that we're in, and we're going to be focusing on more. Interestingly, over the last few years, the last 3 or 4 years, organically, we've had a 16 times growth in this space. So there's definitely a lot more donors thinking about charitable impact with their estate planning. I think largely most fundraisers don't know how to do this. Like it's scary to have that conversation with a donor. So I think we're going to have to be investing in training a lot of fundraisers how to have that initial conversation and thinking about it as part of a gift strategy. It doesn't have to be an estate gift or a major gift. It can actually be a major gift. And would you also like to think of us as part of your estate plans further down the road? Usually you want to have these conversations with donors you have a really good relationship with, because it's a very personal topic. And I guess they'd also good estate planning programs also require that operational support to actually administrate these wills and estates. So if you're going to be in this space, if you don't have that capability in-house, you're going to have to plan to put expenses into legal fees and so forth, because you're going to have to process and manage a lot of these estates. So I think it's a long-term plan, kind of like taking vitamins. It's good for you, but it'll pay off later. And not everybody gets into it. But I do think it's a space for a good, really robust fundraising program.
Yeah, I had a donor once that, few words, but said, you don't have to hide it, but I want to know where to find it when and I'm interested in it. So, I held that kind of dear when we approach this. Jessica, the next question is specifically, I think, around your expertise. how do we get internal stakeholder buy-in on digital content transformation? And I've volunteered and been in other organizations where I think at times you might not get, and I think it led on to the probing question I asked about the buy-in and the training. It can be uncomfortable. So in many of our organizations, smaller ones, larger ones, if you had leadership, if perhaps it's a staff team that has been there for a significant amount of time when we haven't done those things, regardless of what the industry is going in, we're still, producing budgets, we're still doing well. The sky doesn't seem to be falling. We know that the digital transformation is there, but how do you really get internal folks to buy into this?
Yeah, I think someone said it earlier, but you definitely need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're not going to thrive and grow in that area. I would say the thing that stands out for me when you ask that is just like regular, consistent communication and reporting. Like I know that in any role that I've had, what we do have access to is a lot of data and a lot of information. So having a rigorous reporting structure and regular meetings, like if you're only talking about digital transformation or sharing ideas once or twice a year or when it's budget time, you're probably not going to get much buy-in from like senior leadership. But if you're just constant, like we're very rigorous with our reporting, doing campaign briefs, managing the project throughout, and then following up with the key learnings and results consistently. So you're showing in like little pieces throughout the year, this is what we learned, or this is what we should try, or this is what's new, or this is what's coming, and just constantly sharing information and doing research and reporting back on it, and making sure the right people see that, I think is really critical. Otherwise, it will be difficult to get buy-in. It's complex. It's constantly changing, so it's not something you can just look at and talk about once or twice a year. It's got to be regular.
Meaghan, I'm interested in your, from a leadership standpoint. Like obviously, you've been a leader for decades now, and data has changed so much. So, like, what have you seen in terms of like self buy-in to your own leadership teams? What have you seen during this kind of transformation?
Well, I think the thing around a lot of this digital content transformation requires investment in systems, and that requires different skill sets to implement and manage those systems. So just that reference architecture of a core CRM system, and what are all of the peer-to-peer platforms that are plugging into that, and that requires a lot of investment. And I think especially smaller charities, that's a big hill to climb. And how do you get your head around that? And then how do you bring a whole organization along? Because a system doesn't exist in a corner. A system will be used by every single staff member. So I think in terms of making the case, if you're a smaller charity and you're thinking about wanting to try and implement that, or even if you're a charity with not a very robust system, but to compete in this data world that Jessica's talking about, you need to have that digital platform that's working for you. You really got to make the business case and think about the KPIs that you're trying to move. Think about it again, long-term thinking. A lot of these investments are capital investments. So it's not expense you're going to incur in 1 year. You can actually amortize that investment in your CRM and so forth. When you implement systems serve business processes, they serve people. So you want to make sure that those systems are going to help the fundraisers and help anyone in mission delivery do their job really well, which means that business owner has to be at the table driving how they're developed and implemented.
Great. Hopefully everyone was able to still hear Meaghan during that. I don't know if it was my end or on anyone else's, but there was a little bit of a breakup, but I still continue to hear you. The next question is, I think you both have some pretty good insights on this. How to enter new markets? And I think this person might be wondering geographically as well. So I know for both of your organizations, they're not secluded to one area. So how do you prepare yourself or make the ultimate decision on whether you're ready and capable to move into that new area? Maybe I'll start with you, Jessica.
Sure. Yeah, so entering new markets, I mean, that's definitely need a paid approach there as well. But I think first you need to know your share of market. Where are you? What is your share of market? What is your share of voice on all of your channels? Do your market research so you know kind of where where you need to be, do your segmentation, targeting, positioning. And then once you've kind of figured out like where, especially if it's like, yeah, like you said, like a national charity and you're in multiple areas that you need to cover, really understand, or just, use your analytics, see if you have more traffic coming from certain areas, or if you can do testing, like it's really great to do. If you're entering a new market, do some testing in a couple markets where you can have a full campaign running or something where, you can leverage multiple channels. It is an investment to do that, but then you'll be able to see if your message is resonating, what your brand recall is, if people are donating. And I would say it's also really important to look at it from a long-term and short. Don't just focus on those short-term conversions. You need to have the brand messaging out there as well. Some upper funnel tactics that are more based on reach as well as conversion to be effective in the long term. But yeah, I would say a test and learn approach would be really critical when entering new markets. And particularly if it's a national charity where it could cost a lot of money to reach everyone in your area, really figuring out who you want to reach, where they are, and then do testing.
What about you, Meaghan? How have you approached that?
In terms of entering new markets, I'll talk more at the sort of grassroots community level, so not the mass level. Identifying community champions is probably a first place I'd start. So in the case of Make-A-Wish, we grant wishes for children all across the country. So identifying beneficiaries, whether it's wish families or the communities that surround them of those kids, that's a great way for us to identify new markets and maybe inspire someone there to run a third-party event for us or open up a network to run a golf tournament or something. So I think a lot of it is seeing who's benefiting from your charity and are there access there for those people to champion in the community, or are there people who've been connected to your charity in some other way that can be a community champion for you to help open some of those doors?
Yeah, great call. The next one involves, for certain charities, it's a strategy of fundraising for a cause where the direct impact of the donations is difficult to define. This person had said something like climate change. So how do we rally something around issues like that? Feel free, maybe Jessica to start, or Meaghan, go ahead. You wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I loved this question because I think that more and more people are talking about impact, and this is the other side of, I think it's very human. So we want to tell stories, but we also want to show we're moving the needle on our cause. And climate change is big. So how do you define that into impact metrics? Some causes like climate change are so big that you actually need multiple coordinated efforts to actually deal with the problem and move the needle on that. Having worked in funding cancer research for the 3 years before I joined Make-A-Wish, that was absolutely an area. It's hard to show data other than research publications, which may or may not be conquering cancer. So I think it's that one of the emerging areas that I think super interesting in the not-for-profit space is this concept called theory of change. And for those of you that haven't looked it up, I encourage you to find a YouTube video or something on it. But it's a process as an organization where you can develop a model that shows what's the desired change you're aiming for. So in the case of this individual, maybe they're aiming for climate change. That's what they're aiming for. But then they want to map it back to the actions that their organization is doing against that. So they may be a tree planting organization. So how many trees are they planting and where are they? And how do they connect that to research that shows that their actions are actually supporting or helping prevent climate change? So I think that it's really about understanding what's the work you're doing and the clear actions you're doing and how is that having an impact against the goal, and then communicating your work on those actions.
How about yourself, Jess? What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I love this question too. I would agree with that. If I put my Red Cross hat on, I would, just to help illustrate an example, we have a very similar challenge. If we're fundraising or raising money for an emergency or a natural disaster or an appeal, like the Ukraine humanitarian crisis or Hurricane Fiona or the Fort McMurray wildfires, it's very easy to explain what you're giving to. It's, the cause is clear, helping people have been impacted by that disaster and it's immediate. But when you're talking about, like an organization with a big mission and that's involved in a lot of things and, undesignated funds and you're building your general case for support, like Meaghan said, you just need to in the storytelling side or creative side, be really creative with and be able to explain in very simple layman terms, use infographics, use visuals, use videos to explain your story and how someone can make an impact by donating to you or giving to you. And it's not an easy challenge. I think, I deal with this every single day. So really understanding your value proposition, do surveys, ask donors, like do research, try to figure out what resonates, and then, just continue to evolve that. And I think just being really creative, really compelling, creative will help it to stand out as well.
Yeah, great suggestions and advice. This one's more of on a granular, it's kind of an interesting question. Someone commits to giving, but you have not received payment. How many times should you ask for payment, and what are some of the approaches that you could use to mitigate the situation? So Meaghan, that garnered a chuckle out of you. So why don't you verbalize that laugh?
Well, these are some of the questions that no one ever teaches you in fundraising school, right? Yeah. There's no book that says, when you face a donor in this situation, this is stuff, that comes, and it's really, to me, it's all about that individual donor. There is not the private sector. Giving is very personal, and as are our relationships with these donors. I think we also have to appreciate giving's voluntary, and no one signs up for a gift only to find themselves in this situation. I really do believe anybody who makes a gift has the full intention of fulfilling that. So something clearly has happened that's made that not possible. And you want to work with that donor as much as you can to try and find a way to make it possible for them to fulfill their commitment. So I think you have to approach it very solution-oriented. Don't nag. That's not ideal. But it's comfortable. This person's made a commitment, and want to explore options of how you can do that. So whether it's considering alternative payment methods, maybe if they can't fulfill the pledge directly, would they like to run a fundraiser to fulfill that? Really try and partner with them on coming up with solutions. At the end of the day, there are some pledges that will get written off. I think if you are an organization that tracks pledges, you want to have a board-approved pledge write-off policy, just so that you're really tracking all of these pieces. But it always comes down to that relationship and a really respectful conversation, and just really try and be solution-oriented.
Yeah, so much of it is just relationship, I find, in many of these questions and answers. Jess, so this one's we might have covered it, but I'd welcome kind of your lens on it. How do we create a charitable reoccurring income stream?
Yeah, great question. I think I read that recurring donations are on the rise in Canada, actually, even though overall giving is declining. And I know that for us in any organization, I've been recurring giving, monthly donor sustainer program. They have a higher lifetime value. I think we're trying right now to implement more self-serve options for monthly donors. They want to be able to log in, see their giving history, download their tax receipt quickly, personalized experiences. And I think a successful recurring giving or monthly program is critical. You need a team dedicated to really understand what monthly donors want, what they need, leverage multiple channels, face-to-face, telemarketing, digital, SMS. There's multiple ways to grow a sustainer program. And I also have seen recently in the online donation platform side, even there, a lot of companies are coming out with recurring giving, where it's not just monthly. And a lot of organizations have gone monthly first, having a frictionless experience for monthly donors to acquire new donors, upselling them before and after donation, and offering more bi-weekly, quarterly, and annual donation, just offering more flexibility and options for recurring giving. And I think there's a good figuring out which age demographic even is most interested. Like, for example, me, I have small children, I have constant bills and piano lessons, and I'm busy and I don't have a ton of time or the budget to maybe make a large sum one-time gift at this stage in my life. But monthly giving is attractive to me, because if there's a couple organizations I'm really I've been a monthly donor for 13 years or so, because it's easy. I don't have to think about it. I see the money coming out. I know I feel good that I'm giving that, but it's just maybe a stage of life thing where it's really good time to figure out when people are most likely to become a monthly donor, and having a strategy and a team to support to back that up.
Yeah, what about you, Meaghan?
A couple of other things I'd add to, I agree with all the things Jessica said. I'd also say that this is a great opportunity in the corporate role deduction, which is very similar to monthly giving, but it's through a corporate gift. So I think that's one way to think about it. Cause-related marketing is another component of corporate giving that can often be a recurring income stream as well. And also thinking about, moving from one-time gifts to pledges, because that's really creating a pledge base over multiple years, whether it's at the leadership level or the major gift level. If someone's willing to make a $1,000 gift now, well, would they consider making a $3,000 or $5,000 gift over 5 years and just sort of making a longer term, having the courage to have those longer term conversations and making the case of why that committed revenue will allow you to deliver upon your impact in the years ahead.
Yeah, I've to share one internally with my organization for reoccurring income. I've tried to really pair it with reoccurring operations, so like monetizing our core operations. And for us at Ronald McDonald houses is food. So we're always going to feed families. We're always going to provide meals. So that is has turned into more of a reoccurring opportunity for us. So, taking a look internally at, what your organization offers as well. This is a pretty broader question. We've got about 8 minutes left. So if there are folks that are wanting to get a Q&A, I'd advise you to do so soon. So COVID has provided much change. What change has it provided to your fundraising approach that you're going to keep, or I guess, keep, or maybe perhaps not keep? So I'd maybe start with you, Meaghan. Like, how has that changed for your organization's approach, and is it here to stay?
Yeah, so diversified fundraising is definitely one that I think if you weren't doing it before, you're constantly trying to think about how do you diversify. Also, long-term planning is actually relatively short-term now. We've got to be pretty agile because you don't know what's around the corner. So the 5-year business plan no longer exists. Even 3 years is long. And I know that I've had conversations with our board just around the need for us to be open that we'll commit to a 1-year business plan, but 3 or 6 months in, something very significant may happen. And we're going to have to revector, and we're just going to have open conversations about that. And I think it's actually allows you to be more agile and in the way you're approaching things, and not just sort of tunnel vision on these are the only things that I'm aiming for this year, because the world is constantly moving.
What about you, Jessica? What have you seen throughout kind of the COVID experience and keeping and maybe not holding on to certain things?
Yeah, I remember when COVID first hit, I was on like a hospital foundation side in a lottery, and we were full out advertising vacations and trips and everything. So that's changed the way that we market ourselves that way. But generally speaking, I totally agree with Meaghan. I think being agile and constantly just having long-term strategies and plans is really important, but being flexible and nimble as needed, constantly reviewing data and tweaking and optimizing as you go. I also, I think investing in for brand and marketing, that's an investment. It's not a fundraising cost. Sometimes it is, but it's an investment, a long-term investment. And if you just slash your budgets when something happens and completely go quiet, that will impact you in the long term. If you just understand your share of voice, and if you are cutting budgets, just make sure you're still a little bit ahead of your competitors, or not completely cutting out. And just with on the data side, you can do that. You can modify channels or which markets you're in, or make tweaks, but don't just cut everything completely. I think investing in your brand and not just conversion-based tactics, for if you're only advertising in a campaign, and focused on really understand attribution and the benefits of promoting your brand and being out there. And attribution's a big struggle in marketing too. So I think during since COVID, and just really understanding how everything works together and benefits each other is important. So you can remain kind of integrated and omni-channel approach in your fundraising.
Yeah, if I had to share one as well, I would say, from the training PD side, we do a lot of cross training now because you know, COVID, a lot of people were getting sick. People couldn't come into the office. You know, the challenges around the labor market. You know, can, you know, multiple people learn our database? Can multiple people learn, you know, not be an expertise on something, but do they know, can they learn enough for us to withstand, you know, another massive storm? And that's allowed us to kind of, you know, rethink how big we need to be, and again, on capacity. So, you know, I'm sure there's things that we've all learned personally as well during that, you know, some crazy period of our lives. There's a couple minutes left, and I'm going to do a rapid fire. But before I do, I'll get to one last question on the pre-submitted ones, and it's kind of fitting to the last few minutes. Is obviously 2023 will still be tough economically. How are you speaking to donors around this rising inflation in an uncertain time? I think this person's really just looking for a little bit of comfort in terms of, you know, having to kind of communicate that, what I would imagine for the rest of this year and potentially next. I'll start with you, Meaghan, on that.
It's a tough one because it's new. I'll tell you, definitely I've had conversations with the board about it, but not yet with donors. I think just as with anything that's going on, just like it was during the pandemic, it being the reality is our operating costs have gone up. The cost to do a wish, to grant a wish has gone up. The cost for us to run our organization has gone up. So, you know, we're trying very carefully to manage those because we want to obviously have a really efficient cost to raise a dollar. But there's going to have to be some flex in a time when we have this inflation that's so extraordinary. And I think drawing data, making sure that you're using data to make your case that our expenses may be going up, but that's really in line with the industry and the economy. So that's not, we're not at a step with that. But the reality is that increases our need right now. So I would use it as a tool and open conversation but I haven't actually had conversations with donors about it yet.
How about yourself, Jessica?
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I haven't had direct conversations, but I would just say knowledge is power. The more you can learn and understand where the inflation is, what different industry, how it impacts your particular organization, so that you can make strategic and smart decisions and not panic reactions is all I would say.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to end this with a quick rapid fire. So you got to stick to the 30 seconds or less. Describe what you think in 2023 will look like for the fundraising industry, and one quick piece of parting advice for our audience. Meaghan.
So what do I think it will look like? I think it will continue to be difficult and different, but I think that that's not different than past years. I think that it's going to be all about people, and we have to continue maintaining and nurturing relationships with staff and donors, and the organizations that do that the best will be the ones that thrive. In terms of my parting advice, I'd say lead with empathy. It's all about people, seek to understand others, and you know, take genuine interest in people and your donors, understand their motivations. It's really been a tough few years for everyone, and you really never know what someone is managing. So I just say my parting advice is lead with empathy.
Beautiful. Over 30 seconds. Jessica.
I think for 2023 and beyond, just, you know, kind of the themes I've been talking about is, and Meaghan has shared, is charitable funding. It's going to continue to diversify. Don't stand back and wait for it to happen. Like, there's major generational shifts happening. There's a lot of newcomers to Canada. Just research, learn, like there's different ways that people are going to be able to give. I would, just research, understand that what's happening, see, don't just stand back and wait. My parting advice, I guess, is don't wait. You know, there are big changes happening. It's going to be challenging, but we know this. We've been through, you know, tough years already. We can do this. We got this. If you're, you know, learn about artificial intelligence, learn about all the different ways donors can give, and just continue to grow and diversify. Courage
over comfort. Beautiful. Thank you, Meaghan and Jessica, so much. We hope everyone enjoyed today's Knowledge Lab webinars. Please continue to check DeGroote and McMaster's website for upcoming activities. And I wish everyone a great afternoon.
Thanks, Mario. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies.
Bye, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.